What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Shooting the Shit Uncensored. You know who this is. It's the truth, the dad bod god, the bald, the beard, and the fucking beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight, we got a special one for you guys. We have the opinion haver, the one, the only, Jamie the Vet Williams, my good friend from Hamin Media Group, Channel Attitude, Russo's Brand, all that good shit where they spit the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, where your feelings get left at the door. But before we get into that, I want to take a quick second and a quick pause for that fucking cause to pay some bills up in this bitch, and that's to talk about Sleefs.com. That's SLEEFS. If you or someone you know is an athlete, you need to go and check out Sleefs, where you can get all your athletic gear and wear covered. They've got armbands, compression pants, compression shorts, headbands, boots, mouth guards, and they've even got those dirty boxes that you always hear your boy Piers raving about. Now, listen, I'm an active guy. I work full time. I podcast my ass off. I'm like running after my 3 crazy kids, my crazy wife. Just kidding, honey. Don't kill me. And I'm also constantly in the gym. So my boxes need to stay dry. They need to stay fresh. They need to stay comfortable, is what dirty boxes do. And they've got funky designs on the front to keep that special person in your life giggling when the belt buckle comes undone. At the end of the day, they're laughing on what's on the front of your boxes and not what's inside of once, if you know what I'm saying. But anyway, enough dick jokes. But go and check out those dirty boxes at sleeps.com. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount at your final purchase. Also, wherever you're tuning in, I appreciate it. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell to stay notified, tap that little red button, and tap in. Also, if you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. It helps with our analytics. It helps us bring more amazing conversations to more amazing motherfuckers like yourselves. So get to clicking and get to tapping in. But without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Jamie, the motherfucking Vet Williams, baby. Yeah! Boom. And we're live with Jamie the Vet Williams. Bro, welcome to the show, man. I'm excited to have you on, brother.
Oh, wow. I'm excited to be on. I mean, that sizzle reel right there, all the luminary guests, and then you finally got the greatest guest of all, little old me.
That's it, man. That's it. Man, you and I, we've done a few different podcasts, man, like over the last couple years, really, bro. And, you know, this is the first time that I've been able to have you as a guest over on my platform, man. So I'm excited to have you on. And, you know, you guys do a lot of great stuff over Hamin Media Group, you know, like, which is associated with Russo's Brand and Channel Attitude, which I used to be a part of with Wrestling with Tragedy, and, you know, just a great bunch of people. And a great support network putting out some amazing content on a weekly basis. You know, how did you get mixed up in this crazy world of podcasting, and especially with like the Hamin Media Group and the Russo's Brand companies?
Yeah, I remember that's where I first became familiar with you, was the Wrestling with Tragedy stuff. And for me, it was, well, it really just goes back to my OVW time. That's where I met Ben Hamin. So I had that connection there, but I'll circle back to that. One of the people that I used to train and live with back then, named Sergio Rangel, he used to keep in contact with me. I mean, he still keeps in contact with me, but he used to always text me, you know, anything that was going on in wrestling, he'd be like, dude, did you hear about this? Or dude, what do you think about this? And all this other stuff. And I'd just be like, man, get this mark out of my face. But anyway, he would always, he'd always be texting me. And then one day he'd just say like, dude, we should do a podcast. And this was years ago where, you know, everybody was doing podcasts, but not literally everybody yet. Like it wasn't just every single fan that had their own yet. So, and when he said that, I was like, I don't want to do fucking podcast with you, man. Anyways, fast forward a couple of years and I'm listening to all these podcasts, you know, the major podcasts, and I'm sitting there saying like, you know, I don't think that if I was doing a podcast that I would be saying the same thing that everybody else is kind of saying. I feel like I'd be saying something different. So there may be a space for us. So we started doing that, just the two of us. And then Ben Hamin, and the Hamin Media Group had the 5-star star search thing, and where he's looking for new talent to bring on his, you know, affiliate platforms, right? So I'm thinking like, well, I'll just send him an episode of our show, no big deal. You know, I didn't really think about it. I hadn't talked to Ben since that time, which would have been 15 years or something like that. I hadn't been in contact with him at all, and we really didn't speak all that much when we were there together. Like not a lot. So anyway, yeah, he just pushed us through the first round without even listening to it and just said, all right, these guys are in the finals automatically, you know, and we didn't end up winning that. But then like a couple months down the line, he offered us to take over the NXT show that they do on that channel, which is the Next Level Wrestling Review, which is the one I do with Big Ray now, the one that we've had you on multiple times. And he offered us that. Well, Sergio had to drop out like because of life commitments or whatever, like a few weeks in. So he didn't really get to stick around that much, but I stayed around and, you know, the rest is history. But that's how I originally got started. But it was just the odd thing was, like I said at the beginning, you know, it was all with that Ben Hamin connection. And I didn't really know, you know, you think Piers after like over a decade, you don't know what people think of you or thought of you, what kind of impression you made on them. So you really don't know how you live in their memories. So it was kind of like, it was like humbling to be like thought of highly and respected by a guy that I barely knew and that's given me the platform to be on and speak, you know, my mind. But that's how it all started.
But I feel like in saying that as well, like it's a certain level where it's like not necessarily someone you have to have been like boys with back in the day, but someone like that would have seen your work and like heard your opinions and heard like, you know, your thoughts and ideals of what the business would be. And like, I feel someone like Ben Hamin, who is like so like intelligent when it comes to the world of professional wrestling, just like you know what I mean? Like I almost feel stupid to open my mouth and say something or throw a suggestion out about the world of wrestling in front of people like a Ben or a Stevie, because I feel like they're just on a higher level. And I feel like, I mean, that's where it's probably like he's seen that and gone, you know what, this guy is on that equal sort of footing to where I'm at, or sees the same sort of thing through my lens. He's not going to be a mark, which I feel like you couldn't bring like a marquee fanboy, like a major mark onto Hamin Media Group, because I just don't feel like that would fit. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, yeah, like, and I feel like that's where you give that opinion, where it's like, when I've done podcasts with you, you're not necessarily shitting on certain things, but you're just like, man, like it could have been done this way. And then like you went, and I've seen how you do that, where it's like you wouldn't been a very similar with your ideals about booking certain things. And it's like, I sit there and go, God damn, that would actually be pretty rad. You know what I mean? So I feel like you've got a very good mindset for the business. And that's where I think Ben could probably see and appreciate that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I mean, I agree with you. I do think I have a good, but
don't hold back.
But it all comes back to that. Like, I just didn't know if Ben knew that, because I'm thinking, what would he know it from if we never really got together? Ben was part of a, you know how wrestling is, Piers. It's cliquey, you know, like people group up, they have their certain inner circles or whatever. I was never part of Ben's inner circle, even though he was kind of like part of the creative nucleus around what we were doing down there at that time when we were in Derby City Wrestling, which is kind of like an offshoot, like a bonus, if you will, of OVW. Like, oh, we're also doing this thing. And so he was part of that creative. And, other than, maybe telling me what might go on or giving me a quick rundown of something, he wasn't even that involved with that. Most of the stuff that I got was from Rip Rogers directly, who was booking a lot of that stuff, or whatever, would tell me, hey vet, I need a finish for this match, or I need this, whatever. Or he wanted me to produce a match or something, whatever the case may be. But just so not that much interaction of Ben Hamin. So having no idea what he really thought or where he would be seeing it from, I didn't find out until I started working with him that, he had such a great respect for me. How would I know? For all I know, I'd been completely forgotten.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's interesting how, like you even said earlier, it's like, you started out with Sergio and it's like he dropped out. And that's one thing, like I've noticed, like I've been in this, like the podcast game for like 3 years now. And it's like, I ran the podcast network, and that was a major thing that I saw is like, I started to realize, in this game, people are going to fall out very, very quickly. Like it's when you're doing it at the level that we were doing it at with the podcast network, what you guys are doing it at as well, you have to be, it's not just like, rocking up and talking shit with your buddies. Like it's at a high level of what we're doing. And it's like you can just see people as just like they get either overwhelmed by it, or they're like, nah, this is just too intense, or I just can't overcommit to it, because it's like so many times you see people, it's like, they're guns blazing, they'll start a podcast and then they do 2 episodes and they're done.
Do you think, do you see a lot of people where you think it's like, I just thought I'd immediately start making money doing this?
I was one of them, bro. I honestly thought, like, this is where I was at. I was like, I'm going to start my YouTube channel, and in 12 months, I'm going to have 100,000 subscribers. Right?
Easy,
like,
right? And sure enough, you did, right? That's what happened, right? No?
100%. Then I retired. I've never had to work another day in my life after 12 months. Like that. But you know what I mean? But it's like, I thought, like, I'm going to have a wrestling podcast, and it's going to blow the fuck up, and it's not how it works. It's like, it's a consistency. It's a grind. It's like, what I mean? You don't make money off it straight away unless you come with like a massive social media following and stuff like that, right? Like no one's making big money in podcasting unless they have hundreds of thousands of followers.
To that point, that's also why you see a lot of name wrestlers drop out, because they don't get rich immediately off of podcasting. Wrestlers, they want that money. They're looking for that next payday all the time. And they think it'd just be easy to sit around with some mark as a host and say, oh yeah, we're just going to do this podcast and I'm just going to rake it in and I don't have to take a single bump. And then they don't get rich immediately, and then they don't do podcasting anymore. I literally started podcasting with Sergio because I was like, if I have to answer this motherfucker's mark questions in text all the time, it'd be much easier for me to just say it, on the air, record it. Like, why should I sit there texting back and forth with this guy? We'll just, instead of doing that all week, why don't we just knock it out in an hour and a half, 2 hours each week? And I'll answer all his questions and whatever. And then it was so much easier. So I was just looking at it as like a hobby / release valve. Like, let me get all my thoughts out, that'll take care of 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's really how I looked at it. I did monetize it, but I didn't, I couldn't buy groceries with what I made doing it the entire 100%. Time. So you really do it because you want to do it, the same way you'd take up like woodworking as a hobby, or stamp collecting, or whatever else. It might cost you money because, you want to sound professional. You got a great setup there with the noise blocking, cones and, all this stuff. So it's like, you got to invest in yourself just to not make any money and do it for fun almost.
Yeah, man. And like, that's the whole thing. It's like, eventually, it'll get to that point if you're consistent. And it's like, I started off from making nothing to making, a little bit to me. I was like, oh yeah, there's some coming in, and you invest it straight back into it, because it's like, there's more technology that comes out, right? Like there's better microphones. Go, oh man, I got an upgrade. Like, dude, within 3 years, I've had like 7 microphones, right? Because I just was like, no, I got to get something better. Oh, I got to get a Rodecaster, right? That's going to be a game changer. So it's like all these little things that you do to try and better yourself in order to step your game up. And I feel like, you know, a lot of people want to get rich quick. They want to get famous quick. They want to blow up quick. And it's like, you know, I'm not sure, like, I don't want to say this like podcast out loud because like I don't want to really bury it, but there's like a well-known like shoot interview wrestling podcast, right? And it's got like ridiculous amount of subscribers, ridiculous amount of views, but then you go to their social media page and it's like fucking non-existent. So it's like, come on, man, we know you're buying your subscribers and views, bro. Like that doesn't make you a dope ass podcaster, bro. That just makes you a mark.
Yeah, it does. Well, you know what they say? They say, you know, you do what you love and then the money follows, right?
Yeah.
And even though I wouldn't say the money's followed yet, just the fact of it's only been a few years for me as well, but from starting my own little thing for fun, you know, with my friend, and then just getting picked up by, you know, the Hamin Media Group Russo brand, like, you know what I mean? That's like, that's exactly the whole idea of it. I'm still not going to get rich from that, and I'm still not looking to get rich from that. I'm having fun, but you see how when you put in the effort, when you put in the time, when you put in the dedication and the consistency of just being there, things happen for you. You make them happen, but they, you know, it's that can lead to something else. Just like your podcasting has led to other things for you as well that you would never maybe have gotten without the podcasting aspect of it. So even if you're looking at it as a launch pad, you know, but you can't expect it to be a launch pad. You just have to want to be doing what you're doing in the moment, and then that will carry you forward.
100%. Like, have you seen many people in the podcast game that you like, that you feel just sort of like pop into this to think that they're going to like get rich quick or get like blow up famous really quick? And then like when they don't, just be like, yeah, peace out, I'm done.
I don't really know, because I mean, how would I, if they give up that quick, how would I have found out about them? I don't really know. And if you're talking about just in terms of wrestling, I've seen like a few pop up here and there. That kind of just fell off for one reason or another. And I just assume that's the reason. Like, I assume it's because they thought they were going to just, you know, get paid and they don't have to travel. And this would be their new means of income. And you know, and then they're Virgil at the autograph table, you know, like that meme. So, you know, but I can't think of any examples offhand. No.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But so you started like in wrestling at OVW. Is that where you sort of broke in?
Yes.
So Rip Rogers was your trainer originally?
Yes. Well, in a way, it was, you know, he didn't teach me like the mechanics of it. Mike Mondo, I think was my first teacher. And then, a guy, Russell Simpson, after that. So those were the guys. And of course, everybody there, you when you're in the wrestling, you kind of like, you pick up a little bit from everybody you touch, almost like somebody's trying to help you, and it's up to you to listen or not, or to help someone else or not, you know? So everybody's kind of trying to help. So that was that aspect of it. And then once you move out of that beginner's, sort of course, if you will, then Rip was the next step, because he was at one time the guy that trained the WWE contracted wrestlers. And then, you know, that's a whole other story to get into, but the intermediate group was created so that Rip would still have a job. Rip would still be making money training people. But then Al Snow kind of took over the contracted guys and everything like that. So Rip was there in between. And sometimes some of the contract guys were like, they would come down voluntarily to like train with us. And sometimes contracted guys were mandated to come down and train with Rip Rogers.
Really?
Yeah. Like, you need this. So there were a few people that passed through. And I don't know which ones were which. I just know that certain people came in, from, you know, stepping down from the advanced class and on their own time to train with Rip and stuff. So Rip kind of like, if Mondo and those guys show me how to do the basic moves and things like that, Rip taught me how to see wrestling, I guess, is the best way. Like if you had blinders on or whatever, and he took them off and let you see this whole peripheral view of like these other things that's going on. He was able to explain things in a way that was very simple yet relatable, and also profane and usually hilarious. So that's why I think he's widely regarded as one of, if not the best trainers in the world, because he's able to make you see things in a different way, kind of like beat the mark out of you a little bit if you're listening, you know what I mean, to what he's really saying.
Yeah, I mean, and like I've seen a few of the stuff that Rip's done with his podcast as well, and you know, I love listening to guys of that generation, or even having conversations with them. You know, like I've had, you know, certain guys on this podcast, like, you know, Bobby Blaze, Ken Dunlop, and a number of other like veterans that have been on, and it's like you have these conversations with them and you hear them talk, and it's like you just feel like you get an education about the professional wrestling business just by listening to them. Marty Jones was the other one I was going to mention, but it's like, you know, Rip Rogers is one of those guys. Every time I hear some of the stuff that gets put out with him, or like previous interviews, it's like this guy just like pours out knowledge, and it's like, man, like, you know, I hope that this generation of performers are really taking in what like they have on offer when he's around, you know.
I hope so too. Some people, maybe they just they can't get past the, you know, like the language, maybe like the vulgarity, because he's often very, you know, like I said, profane in his verbiage. I just remember like the first time I ever saw him was, you know, we're waiting. We had to actually, well, long story short, we'll just say he comes in the building. We're all waiting like for his class to start, and we're waiting, and we're decided to run just run the drills. Like his lieutenants were like running the drills. So if it was like hitting a crisscross on the ropes or something like that, and he just walks in the building, and we're all around the ring. So I don't see him, and I've only heard people say, "Oh, Rip's coming. You know, Rip will be here. This is Rip's class." And I'm like, okay, you know, like they were very like reverent yet fearful tones, I guess is how I would describe the way people were talking about it. And he comes in and he's like, you know, he's just like, "What the fuck are all you motherfuckers doing just standing around this is a goddamn football team. You better start clapping if we got a crisscross going," you know, and just cussing everybody out. And I'm just like, oh, I get it. Like I immediately understood, like I got the feel. I'm like, okay, I belong here. I get this guy immediately. I understand what he's doing. He's going to be one of those guys that like, he's always seemed like he's aggressive, loud, and angry, and yet not really insulting in like a personal way. Even though he would call you fat or, you know, whatever, or lazy or whatever, but it's almost like in the way you do it to your mates. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
You know, but he's telling you you're fat because he knows they're looking for guys with ripped abs in the WWE. You know, if you're trying to get a job, you know, he's got to make you feel like, oh, I gotta tone up the diet. I got to work out. I got to do this other thing. He's always, you know, negging you to motivate you.
100%.
Yeah, but
like it's without telling you, hey, go on a diet. He's going to make you go on a diet.
Yeah, and some people, you know, just that does not, you know, you can imagine being somebody, you know, of like certain generation nowadays, how they would take that totally the wrong way. But even even 20 years ago, people are still taking it the wrong way, and you know, that may be one of the reasons why there's an intermediate class and he's not teaching the contracted guys, right?
But you know what the thing is as well, like, and I had this conversation recently. It's like there's different training styles that work for different people. It's like, and that's whereas like as a trainer and as a coach, you've got to really be able to understand how the human mind works and who It's in front of you and who you're training. Some people are going to work well with that hard-nosed training of get the fuck up, move your fucking ass, let's fucking move it, move it, move it. And other people are going to work well with, okay, come on, you're doing really well. I need you to push a little bit harder. That's it. You're good. You're doing so well. You know what I mean? People are going to progress with that over that. And then there's going to be people that like to have people shouting abuse and calling them a fat fuck to get them to go to the next level, because that's what's going to get the best result out of them. That's what's going to motivate them to the next level.
Yeah. And he was one thing Rip was really good about is that's mostly like the overarching, like when he's addressing everyone type thing. And then he will also pull you aside and talk to you like a real person. You know, he's not coddling anybody, but you know, if they're not getting the message the first time, then he's calming down and explaining it like this is why you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do that. You know, like he will still explain that to you, but you know, just in general, like what he'll see, he'll just call it out. If he sees somebody doing something, he'll be like rotten, you know, lazy, the infamous, you know, ring the bell, ding, get the fuck out, you know, like just all that stuff. And then, you know, you did something, even if you don't know exactly what, but if you went and said, what I do, he would tell you what you did, you know, and he's not going to make a point of embarrassing you in front of everybody or acting like a drill sergeant where he's just constantly yelling all the time. But I mean, that's what it is. It's just like you said, everyone has their own, you know, I guess the frequency, right? Like there's a frequency you can be reached at. Some is dog whistle, some is really low, you know, almost subsonic, but everybody has like a frequency to reach. And, you know, those great trainers can find that for anyone.
100%. And it's interesting. It's like, you know, I had Johnny Rods on a little while ago, and another person who, you know, without a doubt is probably one of the best trainers in the history of the business, right? And like the way that he always would, like, I've spoken to a lot of guys that were trained by him, like Angel, the Dead Presidents, all these guys were trained, and they always say that the same thing. It was like Johnny always taught us the respect of the business. Like we would go in there, and it was like, you know what I mean? Like Angel would always say, is like he always taught us if we got hurt in the ring, it was no one else's fault but our own. We decided to get in there. We decided to have a match with this person. We decided to be put in a situation where this person could hurt us without knowing that they couldn't work safe. It's not their fault. It's our fault. You know what I mean? Like it was, there was no, he said, like the way he'd explain it was like, Johnny didn't raise you to be a victim. He didn't train you to be a victim. It was like, you're in a business. This is what it is. If you get hurt, there's no one to blame but yourself. True. You know what I mean? Like that's where I feel like that's where it needs to be, is like with now, you know, do you see like now with training and wrestlers coming through that they're being mollycoddled a bit more, whereas before is like that hard nose of like hard training and hard reality of training is somewhat like gone.
In Johnny Rods' training era, because he's been training for a long time, right? And
like since the 50s.
Yeah. So this was where they wanted to weed and keep people out. Okay. The current era is, I have a trainee, that's my income. I can't make them quit. I need to keep them coming back here and paying me money, even if I know they have no shot. Even if I tell them they have no shot, as long as they come. Some people were very content to come and train just so they could tell their friends that they were in a wrestling ring taking bumps. They know they're not going to make it. They have no intentions of ever making it, but they can, but with a certain amount of money, they can play. So you'll have the experience, if nothing else, that you can say you did it, you tried it, whatever, and all it costs is money. I think that's the reason why, because training is its own like cottage industry, you know, like, hey, I may be a nobody in the wrestling business and I may never have been anywhere and I may not actually know anything, but I can tell you I do if I have a jank ring in my backyard and ask you to pay me $1,000.
100%, right?
And if somebody takes that as a starting point, like we were talking about with doing podcasting as a hobby, well, if
Yeah.
I pay this guy to train in his jank ring for $1,000 and all he does is make me take bumps and laugh at me or whatever, but if I go from that to going to trying to get myself booked and going to a reputable trainer or those things, like then maybe some people, some flowers grow out of the concrete there. But in general, who knows what the state of training is, because there's so many places popping up everywhere, and who knows where people are coming from. And a lot of people are just training themselves. So many people you hear are self-trained. Everybody from like the Hardy Boys with their little trampoline gimmick to, even guys like Cash Wheeler, I think, has said that he's never actually been trained in wrestling.
Yeah, Joey Janela's the same person. And
well, it's obvious with Joey Janela, but Cash Wheeler, on the other hand,
the thing is, with Joey Janela, like he comes from like Jersey, that Philly area, where like, dude, how many good training schools have come out of that area over the last 20, 30 years? Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm from the other side of the world and I know that, right? But like, I feel like with someone like Joey Janela, that's where like, if you look at how like years ago, that's how a majority of guys were trained. They'd come in, they wouldn't get smartened up. They would learn to like maybe take a few bumps, etc. And then they would start learning, the psychology and putting things together by doing shows, working with veterans and stuff like that. Right. So like the whole training people and going to a regular school and learning, that was like, originally that was not how it was. Right.
Right. It wasn't. There wouldn't people be like training school. What what's that? Like, what are you saying? Our business isn't real. So it's that whole thing. So yeah, there's everything. It's from people that have the finest facilities. Like you got the WWE Performance Center, or you got places like Danny Cage with the Monster Factory, and the track records of those guys. Or you got the Johnny Rodses of the world, you got the Rip Rogers of the world, you got those type of people. You've also got people that are just fraudulent, or you got people that are, they do know what they're talking about, but maybe you just never heard of them because they were more so like they had the mind for it, just the way like a NFL coach would be like, hey, maybe I can't throw the ball 70 yards, but I know what a quarterback's supposed to do. That kind of thing. And then there's those other people that are the frauds that are just going to take your money. And then there's the people that are like, I don't need to be trained. I've seen this shit on TV. I'll do it myself. And then they'll go and they'll say, yeah, I've been trained, and they'll get booked, and then they'll start a career. I mean, there's so many different layers to the way things are now. And that's why you have a wide range of skills and talent that you see on even national television.
But I feel like people that haven't been trained and stuff like that, now it's easy for people to sort of get like to verify who's been where and what they've done through social media and stuff like that. And I remember seeing a match that was probably like, maybe like late 70s, like per se, from British. And it was a Marty Jones match where he wrestled this guy from Australia. I can't remember the guy's name. It's on YouTube. I'll send you this match. This guy from Australia said, yeah, I'm a worker, went in there, everything like that, was supposed to go over Marty Jones in this match. And you see throughout the whole match, like, this guy's like no selling shit. He's just like really awkward around the ring. Like when he goes to take a bump, he's like falling and stuff like that, to the point where you see the end of it, Marty Jones just get the shits and go bang, knock him straight out, pins him 1, 2, 3, rolls out of the ring. And I found out he got heat from the promoter. He's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And Marty Jones was like, fuck off. I'm not letting this dickhead beat me. Like, he didn't even know what the fuck he was doing. So I knocked him out. Like,
Yeah, I wish there were more stories like that.
You sadistic bastard.
It's crazy. But yeah, there's a lot of things. And, in general, you see people have these sort of like, I don't know, kind of whiny takes on the wrestling business today, not realizing that in some form or fashion, some things have always been like this, and they just sort of like slightly evolve, or, people, there have always been people that were claiming that they were trained by so-and-so, or they weren't smartened up to the business, or I don't know, man. If you watch some of those like those NWA, TBS Superstation, like those tapings with Tony Schiavone and David Crockett, and like
Yeah.
some of the guys that would get in the ring with guys like the Barbarian or whatever, I'm like, I swear you guys just put a janitor in tights and said get in that ring and let the Barbarian throw you around for 7 minutes because they didn't look skilled at all.
No.
So I don't know, but that's what it is. It's so crazy because it's not like legitimate competition. You can't regulate it in any way. You can always have somebody jumping off a barn or like lighting themselves, having the ref light you on fire, and like all kinds of these crazy things that you see now. It's amazing.
That's where I've always said I used to enjoy deathmatch wrestling, but I feel like now it's just such bullshit. Where it's like that, it's just ridiculous, man. Like before, like years ago, there were guys that could actually work, and they would use the deathmatch stuff to elevate certain things. Like when you saw like Mick Foley and Terry Funk do it, they could tell a story. Same with like Brody and those sort of guys. They could tell a story with it. Even like years later, like Zandig and Nick Gage, they can kind of tell a story with it. And there's a few that can do that, but for the most part, deathmatch wrestling, and I don't want to get on a tangent of deathmatch wrestling, but it's like, for an example, that's the same sort of thing, right? Like it's people that can't necessarily work that go in there and just like, yeah, I'll take punishment to get my 15 minutes of fame and get a little bit of clout.
Yeah, they saw it. They saw the Cactus and Funk stuff, from FMW or whatever those promotions were that they did that in. They saw that and just said, I can do that. That's a lot of wrestling in general. Like the fans that grow up and want to be wrestlers, it's like they saw it and they wanted to do it. And what degree they decided to take that path, of course, that varies from person to person. But yeah, deathmatch wrestling, same thing. Like when you're just a fan watching it, you're fascinated by it because you're like, wow, look at these guys, or look at what they're doing. Part of it is that you know them. Like I know Terry Funk. It's like he's already been NWA champion. Like he's had his run and he's doing this in his later years. So seeing somebody like that doing that kind of a spectacle, you're like bizarrely attracted to it, and like I gotta see this because it's crazy.
Yeah.
Once though you get in, so now you as more than a fan, as a part of the wrestling business and being around it and seeing it, you kind of, for me, same thing. Like when I see that stuff now, or even looking back on the old stuff, then the stuff that I used to watch, like I just see like, oh no, 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 this is all wrong. This is not this is not what we're supposed to do. It's different when you have a stake in it beyond just watching it on TV or, at the most maybe buying a ticket to go see it. When you're part of it, when you're counted on to be a part of it, when you're counted on to sort of protect it or uphold it or whatever the case may be, pass it on. Like you look at things totally differently. So what I was fascinated with deathmatch wrestling when I was younger, now it's just like I'm just, oh my, even it's very it's bad. It's bad is all I can say.
Oh, it's the shits, bro. 100%. But like, like it's funny. Like we saw like the whole wrestling world, like the other week, go in an uproar because like the Angry Vet, some Facebook fucking account that's
Not
run
me.
by, the different vet, but run by some vet said, don't take a picture with fucking famous people and shows because you look like a mark, and everyone got upset by it. And it was funny because it's like then people are doing this whole movement of like hashtag take the photo, and it's like, okay, cool, like you're all upset about it, but like why do you give a fuck about what someone fucking posted on a fucking social media page? Like who gives a fuck, right? Like, okay, cool, you don't agree with it, but like this whole thing is just ridiculous. Like all these people going, yeah, I took the photo. I'm like, what? Like, who cares? Like, what this person has to say? Like, if you don't agree with it, cool.
Well, isn't that pretty much the entire internet? I mean,
Yeah.
we don't. I don't care what you have to say, but we do. I don't care what anybody has to say until I do. We decide what we're gonna find important or whatever. I'm not as familiar with this take the photo movement. Is there something more to it than
No,
just
I don't think it was. It was like this Facebook page. It was like run by a wrestling veteran. It was like, I've been on shows and blah blah blah. And it's like, when you're on a show and you're working with someone who's been at the the big show.
Oh, so you're saying like if you're a worker and you are on a show with somebody that you look up to,
don't go.
You're a mark for getting a photo.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. And then like all these workers were like started this movement of like hashtag take the photo and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's the case, then yeah, you're right. It doesn't really matter. The way I look at it is I would agree that it does make you look like a mark if you're doing that. But then again, maybe I'm not the right person to ask because I don't ask people for autographs. I don't ask people to take pictures. I met Mick Foley at his, at one of his, like he does his shows, his comedy shows or whatever, and has the little signings after or the
spoken word shoes, whatever.
Yeah, I just went and shook his hand and talked to him for a minute. I didn't get a picture. My friends got a picture. I didn't ask him for an autograph or a picture or anything. I just wanted to talk to him for a minute, and let him know that something he had, like one of the books he wrote, I thought was cool, and it was a book that people probably don't come up and talk to him about a lot, just something like that. But that's just not me. I don't do that. If someone else does that, I'll think like, oh, I can see how that'd be a bad look, but I don't hold that against them and then start side-eyeing them and everything like that. Everybody's different. It means a lot. And those same wrestlers, the up and coming wrestlers getting a picture with a veteran wrestler, those veteran wrestlers, if they were in a restaurant with some actor or some musician or whatever, and would they get a photo? And are you a mark? Like, it's up to you how you feel about those interactions with celebrities or people that you perceive to be in a higher plane than you are. It's up to the person. So that's what I think about it anyway.
I always find it funny that in the wrestling business, the biggest insult you can give someone is calling him Mark.
Oh, it is.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many other more insulting words you can say, but in the world of wrestling, you call someone a Mark, that's like, what the fuck did you call me? Like, that's fighting words.
No, it is because it's like, and I don't want anybody to think that I literally mean this. I'm using it as an extreme example so that people can get an idea or whatever. But like the mark, if you call a fan a mark, the fan should take that as like being called the N-word almost. It's like an insult on the level of that's the disdain that we have. And they've sort of taken it for themselves, in a similar situation, and they call I'm a mark for this, I'm a mark for that, which it's like, okay, but a fan calling a wrestler a mark, that's almost like the most insulting thing you can do.
100%.
Because ultimately, what does a mark mean? It means you're a sucker. If you're a sucker, that means that you're not intelligent enough to see when you've been hoodwinked or taken advantage of. And nobody wants to admit that they fell for anything. Nobody feels dumber than when they fall for something that they feel like they shouldn't have fell for. It's not even the same as being lied to by somebody you trust. It's even worse. It means like, I was too stupid to see this for myself. That's why. And that's where it comes from. I'm sure. But if anybody listening to this show doesn't know, it comes from in the carnival when the people would put chalk on their hand and pat somebody on the back to let people know, like, hey, this guy will fall for your rigged game because he's not with it. And then, hey, step right up and win a prize for your girlfriend. It's like, he can't knock these bottles down. They're way too heavy. Like, but he doesn't know that. And they've all seen it. That's what the mark means. But they're basically saying you're a sucker, which is basically saying you're an idiot, which basically means that I'm just going to take your money. And that's why it's a big insult.
Yeah.
And there's layers to it. So I can, that's why I think that's why people take it so seriously. Yeah.
Like, what I find hilarious is when I see fans that have never been around or involved in the business calling other fans that have never been around and involved in the business a mark. and they have arguments about it. Like sometimes I just go onto like random wrestling Facebook groups just to read the comments, just to laugh. And it's like some of the shit I'm just like, oh, like I cringe for it because I'm just like,
I've said that before too. Like a lot of the state of wrestling fandom now is, if you sum it up, it's Marks calling Marks.
yeah, yeah,
That's it. That's what it is. Some of them are in places that they think are like, authoritative places. People like, people that write for outlets like websites,
yeah,
whether it's, doesn't matter whether it's Wrestling Inc. or, WrestleZone, or, these people that branch off and do their own things like the Housemans and the Salcedos and the, whatever, like they all, they have Sean Ross Sapp. They all have this disdain for certain elements of the business or whatever, but not realizing that they're just another part of the business that people also have disdain for. It's like they're very oblivious and hypocritical about the whole thing.
But I feel like, and that's the thing. It's like it's interesting because it's like you see like these dirt sheet riders having beefs with like each other, and like we saw like, I don't want like Vince has pretty much put this out there on many podcasts as well. Like his beef with like Sean Ross Sapp, for example, is like, man, why would this guy be like trying to start wars with people involved in the business? Is he trying to get himself over? Like what?
Yes.
Like what? Like,
yes.
Why would you do that? Because it's like, if you're the media for this thing of this big company, why would you not present yourself in a professional manager? Why would you Why would you try and put yourself in a pissing contest with people?
Well, part of it is what you said. Like, I'm getting myself over by doing this. If I'm trying to punch up, if I punch up and I get a knockout, then what does that make me? That makes me better than Vince Russo or whoever else that he goes after. That's what he might think. And in terms of professionalism, like, what in his life or in his current situation would make him think he has to worry about being professional? Like,
True.
He makes a living talking about a weird made up carny sport. So how can you feel like you're above anything? You're showing up at indie shows with a mask on, like, ha, I gotcha, Shazza McKenzie. Like, what? I mean, does this look like somebody that has any idea what professionalism is, or any idea what respect is?
I saw like the thing he did like with the mask and stuff like that, and you saw like the reaction from the crowd. They were like, okay.
You didn't see the reaction from the crowd. There was.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like the crowd was just like, all right. And he's like, thinking is like Vince McMahon. It was me all along, Austin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was just like crickets.
Bro, if I saw Sean Ross Sapp's picture, I wouldn't know it was him. I'd need a little, lower third, like telling me that's him. I don't know what he looks like. And I'm very involved with, this sort of
media,
this sort of space that we're in. Yeah. So I don't even know. So what do you think those fans think? Like, how are they supposed to know who he is if they've even heard of him?
I mean, like, unless they're hardcore fans, like, Fightful's got a big following, but like, I'm sure not every like indie fan that's going to a show is going to know who Sean Ross Sapp is, or who even we are as podcasters, right? Like, to a certain extent, it's like sometimes they're just people that are just, hey, there's a wrestling show, I want to go see it. There's like, okay, this guy just DDT'd this woman in the middle of the ring. All right, now he's acting weird.
Great. Yeah, I don't know how that. It's interesting. I guess you would just say that when you've seen like the Meltzers and the Kellers that were trying to like sort of chronicle the business, in terms of like history and stuff like that. And yeah, there's editorial on all that, but ultimately a lot of that was like cataloging and chronicling. And so that people, now when Conrad has podcasts to do, he can have people look up old back issues of the Observer and find out what date was this, how much was this supposed house, what was this supposed attendance, what was this or that, what was on the card. Like, that's very good. But I don't think these guys are really providing any of that. They're trying to drum up business for the fans that find the rumors and the gossip and the stuff, they find that interesting. It's the same sickness that I think that humans have when it comes to things like the reality television shows where people have heat with each other, like Real Housewives shows, or they love seeing that drama, whether it's manufactured or it's supposedly real, whatever it is. And the other people, the saps and the whatevers, they're like trying to tap into that. They're trying to get a piece of that Meltzer Keller, like that pie, but they're just leaving out all the statistics and stuff and just going for the rumors.
Yeah, I mean, they're going for the heat, they're going for the clickbait, they're going for that juiciness of that. And I feel like that's where like a majority of people, they want to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it's like, most of these guys get fed bull. Like if they do have connections in like a WWE or an AEW, and I've heard stories that, wrestlers are like, yeah, I'm going to feed this Mark this story and watch this. And then it's like, they'll feed a bunch of bullshit to them. These guys will go and report it straight away. And then they're just sitting back laughing going, you dumb fucking Marks. Like you just, you know what I mean? Like this, you know what I mean? Like,
I think that's possible that, that isn't that what I heard was that maybe that's how Jimmy Jacobs lost his WWE job, because they told him things they didn't tell anybody else, and when those things appeared in the sheets, they knew who the leak was. I heard that.
Like,
don't know if that's true.
No, like I had Jimmy on the podcast, and he told me the whole thing of him taking photos. Well, him getting released was the photo with the Bucks and Cody and Marty Scurll when they did the elite invasion of Monday Night Raw. And he said it was getting to the point where he was like, I'm not happy. Like he goes, I just got out of rehab, and he goes, and I quickly realized that working for WWE while not on drugs just is not fun. Like he goes, you need to be on drugs to work there. Like he goes, because it's like, and he goes, but when you're sober, you're so emotional, and you're so because everything is, your senses are heightened. But he was saying, he's like, yeah, I went and took a photo of my friends. He's like, I kind of knew what was going to happen. He's like, I sat down with Hunter and, all this sort of stuff. And then it's like, yeah, well, eventually it was like, yeah, we're going to let you go. And he was like, yeah, fine. No problem. But yeah, like the whole thing about it was that from what he said was because of the photo.
Well, yeah, he said that. And, but I can also confirm that is true, because I've got my own, about the thing about not liking to work for WWE sober. Like I've got my own sources on that can definitely confirm that whole. It's a very taxing schedule for everybody. Yeah, at least it certainly was under the McMahon regime, which it still kind of is, but especially the creative part of it, because it seems like people are working all these hours only to just have their stuff shredded. So it's like, well, why are we working such long hours if but yeah, it's like you almost have to be on call, like a doctor or something, if you're on the WWE creative team. And so I'm hoping that Hunter has a much more lenient schedule in place for these guys, so they don't have to medicate just to make it through.
It would be such a pressure cooker though, because it's especially I reckon the hardest job in there would have to be for being a writer, because it's like you'd be constantly stepping on eggshells, and it's like, oh, okay, which grenade am I going to step on, which landmine am I going to step on, and it's going to blow up in my face. Because it's like it would be such a hard thing to your job is to please Vince McMahon with creative every single week.
Yeah, and it is, and so yeah, like I said, that's why I hope for them it's a little easier now. They don't have to worry as much. But even with writers, it's the same thing as wrestlers. Like you have a varied sort of group of people. Like some guys, great writers, don't care about wrestling, but this is a job they could get coming out of college. Some guys, not that great writers, big wrestling fans, so they get wrestling, but their stuff's no good. Some guys, good writers, wrestling fans, and some of their stuff gets through and some of it doesn't, because again, it depends on what the boss wants.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of frustrated creative people there that actually turn out some good stuff, but we'd never see it. And even if we saw it, it would have gone through like a few variations before and probably lost all the teeth that it would have had if they had just been able to put it on there. That's why when you got Ben with his alleged consultant series,
Yeah.
talking about the stuff, the notes and everything that he was submitting, it's kind of sad because even if that stuff, like even if they'd used all the ideas, it would have been their version of the ideas and they wouldn't have got it. You need to have
Yeah.
the people involved there on a daily basis. But even the people that are involved there on a daily basis, I can also confirm it's almost like a 50-50 of whether your stuff gets used, especially the way you imagined it.
Well, that's the whole thing where, like, when wrestling fans say it's bad booking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, I always say, it's like, well, it's not necessarily bad booking. And they'll go, what do you mean? I go, well, you look at it like this. A booker, a writer, a promoter, whatever it is you want to call them, they'll have a vision for two workers or a match or for an angle, whatever like that. So they've got their vision on how they see this play out. Then you've got the two workers who are going to go and orchestrate this masterpiece. Now, the way it's explained to them, they may see it through a different vision and through a different lens than from each other and from the booker. So then you're getting three different variations of this vision of this angle that they want to play out. And then sometimes when it goes out there, it just doesn't mesh and it just doesn't hit the right bells. Not everything can be, you know what I mean? Like that Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair, moment. Everything will be the Stone Cold versus The Rock at WrestleMania 17. Like all these things might not necessarily always fall into place. And it's not necessarily because the creative's bad. It's just because the visions don't align and they can't deliver that creative.
Yeah, there's a million things that can go wrong, but it also takes sometimes it takes like a few things just to go right that weren't even planned for. And then the question is, are they going to run with that? Or are they going to snuff that out because it wasn't part of the vision originally? You have to learn when to latch onto those organic moments that you just can't make. You can't sit in a room and write an organic moment. That's the complete opposite of, what an organic moment is.
And I think that that's where, like, sometimes when you've got two good workers that can just sort of like have that cadence and have that feeling of the crowd, it's just sort of like, taking that moment. And you kind of see that with like Roman Reigns when he's in there. It's like sometimes he'll just take that moment where he's taking a minute extra before he talks and he's building that crowd up. And it's like he's then got that crowd. And then when he's like says his line and then he gets that reaction from him. He's controlling that audience, and that's something that not every performer, is able to do. And it probably takes some performers and that's not something that Roman's been able to do from the get-go. That's probably something he's seen him do in the last 2 years.
Yes. Roman's one of those guys that like he's a great example of I'm gonna like if Vince or whoever is like, I'm going to smash this guy down everybody's throat.
Yeah.
And they don't always accept that. In fact, most people don't. And when you see his vision for what Roman Reigns was, in talking about your vision, you see what that was. That was a bunch of bad ideas, a bunch of ill-advised things that situations that he was put into. With the promos about suffering succotash and Jack and the Beanstalk to that Royal Rumble where he fucking it was like he was number one. It was like the one versus all Royal Rumble. You remember that?
Yeah.
And they had him stretchered out like halfway through it because they thought in their mind that he was going to make a big heroic comeback, but the people just shit on it because they were like, oh wait, you're just going to sit out half this Royal Rumble? That's, if you were really tough, you would have stayed in there. So like, putting him in all these unenviable positions, and then, it's almost like, just my take on the whole thing is that Vince finally gave up because Paul Heyman was just like, sir, allow me. I think I can get Roman where you want him to be. And then he's like, fine, do it. Like, I don't think you can, but whatever. And then that's where we get the Roman of today. It's like when Vince stops trying to have his ideas and lets somebody else try, then we get this. So,
but it's almost like it's the whole thing of like they wanted him to turn heel, right? And then as soon as they turn him heel, he then starts getting babyface reactions.
yeah, because he's cooler. He's cooler as a heel than he was trying to be as a babyface. Like, the more badass they were trying to make him look, the less people bought it. Because it really wasn't badass, You don't. No badasses talk about Jack and the Beanstalk in promos. They just don't. So, it's almost like the fans are cheering the booking, which you shouldn't. You're bad at your job if the fans are cheering booking and not people. Yeah. Fans are supposed to pick their favorites.
Well, that's the thing as well. It's like, I've spoken to people. It's like, when you hear, certain promotions getting the initials chanted, like the ECW chant and stuff like that. And it's like, well, if I'm running a promotion, that would just tell me that, like, my promotion's over, but, like, everyone I work, there's not one single person that's over. Because it's like, wouldn't you rather be having them chant vet, 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 vet than TCW or ACW or whatever variation you want to put of a company, right?
Yeah.
Like at what point is it looked at like going, okay, my roster isn't getting over, but or our roster collectively is getting over, but there's no standout star. And that's why they're chanting for the company.
That was sort of a, that's something that you could kind of trace back to ECW. And I don't know if you can trace it back any further than that, because wrestling was kind of different, prior to, when was it East Coast Wrestling became, or whatever it was called, became Extreme Championship, Eastern Championship Wrestling. Was that it? Yeah. It's been so long, I forgot. But yeah, it became Extreme with the Shane Douglas promo and all that other stuff. And I think a lot of those things you can trace back to that. The things today that we don't like are like the offspring and the grandchildren of stuff that started in ECW. And we thought it was cool back then because, again, the same way we looked at death matches, like, we weren't trying to worry about how we were going to make a living in this business or how we were going to be a part of this business. We were just looking at it as like, well, I'm a smart fan. I want to see something cool that's a little bit, behind the curtain. That's what we like. And
that's what I feel like, but even like you look at generations, it's like the generation before is always going to find an issue with the current generation. Like, I remember like hearing a story that like Steamboat and Flair, when they were having like their feud in like the mid 80s, that veterans were coming up to them going, you two are killing the business. You just, and that's Steamboat and Flair, two of the greatest in-ring performers of all time. And people were like saying, nah, you're going to kill the business. Right. So I think that everyone, like every generation has kind of copped it from the generation or generation before them.
Sure. And you can always point backwards, point the finger backwards and say, well, look at what you did then. Like, that was the precursor to this. Like, if they thought Flair and Steamboat were killing the business, then they probably thought, Buddy Rogers and Pat O'Connor were killing the business by doing a bunch of sequences and stuff like that, somewhere Ed Strangler Lewis was like, why don't you just sit in a headlock for half an hour? Like, what are you guys doing? You running the ropes. What is this? There's always things you can point to that were good and bad about all generations.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said about the promotion becoming the star, that's something that the WWE has seemed like they've angled towards, because when they make a star, the stars shine too brightly and they've got to move on, whether that's The Rock, John Cena, whatever. And they want to make people feel like they're under the thumb and not bigger than the company. And so they don't want to push people to their full abilities. So you have a bunch of like half-assed promotion, half-assed marketing, half-assed everything. And we get what we get.
Well, that's where I think WWE is on that bigger level because, like, like they're at a point where it's like no star is going to be bigger than them, right? Like you look at Sasha Banks, she left WWE, went to New Japan Pro Wrestling. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Bye. Like, you know what I mean? No big deal. Like, where like WWE isn't really losing money here. Like, they're not losing anything with you being over there because now they'll just start promoting Bianca Belair or Rhea Ripley in that spot, and you can fuck off. And you know what I mean? Like, that's fine. You were just someone who once worked here, like someone else, you know, throughout the history of books and whatever, right? And like, it's the same thing. It's like they've built up a brand that's so big now. It's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, Roman Reigns could go out injured for the next 18 months. That's fine. We have countless of other people that we can just put straight back in that spot and then just keep the ball rolling and keep the engine rolling. And I think when you've got a business at that magnitude, you kind of have to be able to operate like that. Because if you get all invested, like in another situation like they did with John Cena and Rock Hogan, all the sort of other stuff, then you risk losing your investment years down the line. You know, they get injured. How are you going to draw?
I think that it was always the case. I mean, even if you were a smaller promotion, you still, if you lose your top star in a small promotion, you've got guys that are always ready to step up. There's always another man up. It's just too short-sighted to not be as big as you can.
Yeah.
You should make the most stars that you can. You should make it so that, you know, if the WWE was firing on every cylinder they could be, there would be people that would be just as happy to make a living there and stay there as go off and make movies or do whatever else. But I think they're not maximizing their earning potential on all these people because of that attitude. You know, it's we've seen the WWE cut off their nose to spite their face a lot of times,
countless times, right?
And Sasha Banks is one recent example of somebody that was like, well, I don't need you either. So she goes and she does her own thing. She's working matches that she wants to work. She's getting to work Japan, which she always wanted to do. She's on The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Paycheck from Disney doesn't hurt. You know, like she's gonna be all right. And so is the WWE. But you know, at the same time, you know, maybe if you didn't frustrate Sasha Banks so much that she walked out, you'd be like, hey, maybe Mandalorian fans want to come and check out our product. Maybe Star Wars fans like to see some WWE now because we got one of their characters on our show and vice versa. But they get spiteful, they get indignant, they get mad when somebody tries to get big or do their own thing. They'll kiss a John Cena's ass and let him do whatever he wants and still bring him in and let him do whatever he wants. But you know, for some reason, it's a problem with other people to have like a little Twitch channel and make a little extra money. So it's, you know, there's always that the levels of pettiness, you know, just can't be they can't be underestimated there. But wrestling's always been a position where you've had talented guys that may not be the top guys, but they may be better than the top guys, but that's not their spot in that promotion. So if you lost every top guy you had, all these talented guys could become top guys and, you know, maybe even do better business. It's always been like that. And I think the WWE is just missing out with a lot of, you know, corporate greed and just pettiness.
What do you think about the whole joint venture now with Endeavor, UFC, and WWE?
I have no idea what to think. I really don't, because I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen or what's going to go on. I don't think Endeavor knows what they bought. I don't think WWE knows what's coming for them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to get blindsided by this while people figure things out. Well, you know, they lay all the cards on the table and like, okay, what do we got here? Like, what do we actually got here? And I'm hearing things about lots of layoffs already. Yeah, you know, there's going to be a lot of redundant positions and things like that. I can't even pretend to give you an educated position. So I'll just be honest and tell you that I don't know. And I can also quite assuredly tell you that nobody else knows either. No one.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon does not know what just happened to him. He doesn't know. He thinks he knows, and he's going to go out and say what he thinks or what he's supposed to say. but he doesn't know what just happened.
Yeah, like I want to see where it's going to land in about like a year or two's time, when Ari Emanuel's like putting the pressure on Vince McMahon, like as if they're not getting the result or the return. You know what I mean? Like something's got to happen, and it usually comes down to the CEO of an organization. You know what I mean? You're the head of the snake. It's not performing. Time to put a new head on this snake.
Right. And don't you think, like, I said this, and some people are like a little incredulous, but just if you really just think about it, we're now at a point that we've never been at where the WWE could just go away. Like if they decide, and I'm not saying it's a likely possibility. I'm not even
Yeah.
saying it's likely. However, it's a more than 0% probability that one day they could look at the WWE as an asset that's not worth keeping on the books and just close it. Like, we're done with this. We don't need this. It's over. You know what I mean? And either sell it to somebody else or just close it entirely. Try to get some money back, whatever the case, because that happens. It happened to WCW. And even though WCW isn't as big as WWE is now, also you have to think of like the inflated figures, that they're cooking these books trying to say that the WWE's worth this much. And I'm sure that Endeavor paid more than what it's really worth to get the WWE. So,
Well, I mean, like Endeavor weren't the only bidders as well. Like there was like rumor has it like Disney was in it, the Saudis were in it. The fact that they own the UFC now as well, and the UFC and WWE and like Endeavor, like man, Ari Emanuel is a very, very highly intelligent individual, man. Like he is like been around for many, many years. I think he knows what he's got there, and I think like the tape library alone would keep them in the keep him in the green for many years to come.
it's possible. But you also look at the WWE tried to monetize that very library, and then they end up selling the network, right? So what is this selling? Like if you have the WWE network, you created the WWE network so that you have your library in a digital format that you can give to the people for a subscription price. Okay, well, that was never panning out like monetarily the way they expected, because that changed the whole payoff system for things like live events, like pay-per-view things. WrestleMania is included in my subscription. I don't know, I no longer have to pay $60-$70 to watch WrestleMania. So how much money are we losing with that? How much money are the guys losing on payoffs or whatever?
Yeah.
They do all that, and then they take that and they just sell it. Here you go, Comcast. Have all of our stuff. Like have the rights. It's the streaming rights, of course. They don't actually own the library. But, for that chunk of change, does that not that tells you right there they weren't able to monetize their own stuff correctly. So now what would Endeavor do with the WWE tape library?
I mean, do you think
Are they going to start selling Blu-rays of SummerSlam 91?
Do you think the WWE network wasn't making money? Like, do you think that's what sort of went that way? Because I kind of feel like there's so many wrestling fans in the world that would have like had that tape library just to have it at $10 a month. You know what I mean? For those who had, you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you?
I know that's one of the reasons I had it.
I had it for years, and like even sometimes I'd go months without even watching anything.
Sure. But it was nice to know, right? It was nice to know you had it there.
Have it there if I wanted to watch like ECW or from like 2001 or WCW from 96 to 98.
Yeah, it was great. And I guess it just wasn't like they had to have been making a ton of money on it, but I mean, if they really were, would they have felt the need to sell it? Did they want to sell it just for the optics of saying like, look, we made a big business deal?
Yeah.
And where did they fall? Like, what is their cut of that? Like if you give them the extreme, if you give Peacock, whatever, the exclusive streaming rights to the WWE library, which that infrastructure is awful. How do you have a something for like 6-7 years, and then you move it to another platform, and the technology's worse than it was in 2014 when it launched? Technology's supposed to get better.
But you can't even get the full network. Like we have it on Binge, which is kind of like a fucking service similar to Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Binge, it hasn't got half the shit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So,
But even then, it's like when it went to Peacock, right? It then started getting censored and stuff like that. It was like, we see it now with Binge stuff when Stone Cold was like flipping off people, or like people,
and they
like,
blur that out when you like no one knows what he's doing.
yeah, and you just see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like Val Venus, they blur him out when he's got the towel on, and it's just but it makes it look worse than what it is. Instead of him wearing a towel, now you're like thinking, wow, this guy's swinging his cock around with nothing, like in front of a crowd.
Yeah. There's been a lot of weird censorship like that, even on the network when they would do, certain things. Like I can't even explain why they did some of the things that they did that they censored out of there, but that's how WWE, like, they get to revise history. It may not even be something offensive. It could be like a production mistake. They can go back and like scrub that out, and so like they get to rewrite their own history and everything. But I guess, they closed their like home video business to the point where, like, I think they only release like WrestleMania on Blu-ray now. Like, I think that's the only physical media that you can buy. I think so. And so it's like they think the home video market is not anything to make money off of. They're selling their whole network infrastructure to, they're leasing it out to other companies. It makes me wonder, like, well, what value is there in that library anymore? I mean, obviously we as fans see the value of, like, hey, I'd pay you this amount of money if I can do this, and this. But they're going to see the hardcore wrestling fan base as a very, very small market and not worth the money it would take just to keep the thing up and running, the bandwidth alone, that they'd have to spend to keep that up there. So I can see some company that doesn't have as much of a stake in it, like Endeavor, this is just saying, like, well, what are we going to do with all this? Like, what are you really buying? You know what I mean? Whoever buys the WWE, it's like, what are you buying? If you're not going to continue to run the live events, you have no product. So that's where the real money is. It's really taking that live event business, which is what wrestling is, which is what sports are, and trying to monetize that to the best of your ability and make the most money on those. And then you try to make all the rest of it with the streaming and, the buy rates and those things, the TV
and all that shit.
Yeah, the merchandising, the TV rights, like who's got the broadcasting rights for these things. If they at some point see that it's not enough, they could just say one day, like, who needs the WWE? It could happen. Whereas, the McMahons never would have let that happen.
No.
Yeah, so it's a weird time that we're living in here.
But I feel now, like, once Vince is like out of it, then the McMahons are done in the wrestling business. Like, I don't feel like they would, like, unless Hunter then steps up into the CEO spot. But, like, you know what I mean?
Which we all thought that was the plan, right? Didn't we all think that?
We did, but I feel like now with Nick Khan there as well, and like Nick Khan, who is like fucking, he's like the fucking, you know what I mean? He's like the mortician of fucking WWE. He just walks through. He's like the anti-Oprah. He just walks in, he goes, "You get a fucking release, bitch. You get a release."
Kinda, right?
Like it's savagery.
I think he'd be fine with letting, Hunter do his thing and working in some kind of a partnership, even if he's not employed there full time and goes off to do whatever else, become the hatchet man for some other, expensive corporation. But, yeah, he may be a wrestling fan, but I don't think he cares to really run the creative or the booking or that kind of aspects of it.
No.
So if Hunter wants, I always kind of assumed that the reason that Hunter cemented his place in the family was that so one day he could be kind of like the Vince McMahon, Only the biggest difference between Hunter and Vince is, Hunter actually does like wrestling. He doesn't hate it so much that he wants to make it into something that it's not, like Vince has done for the 40 years and plus. So so Hunter has that respect and he's a wrestling fan, but he also has now been under the WWE umbrella for so long that he knows what else to do to bring it to a mass global audience, like that Vince McMahon has done for so long too. But
Well, I found it interesting the fact where like people are going, "Oh, Vince is back and he's back in creative," and it's like, bitch, did you really think he left?
yeah,
Like, come on, man. His daughter was the one who stepped into as the CEO. His son-in-law was doing creative. Bro, you don't think that he was sitting there going, "Hey, Paul.
I
Hey, Paul. Hey, Steph.
he
Do
could
this."
he could have been, but then you see, but then you got to ask the question. It's like, so remember what happened, that Vince McMahon, why would you think Vince McMahon would feel the need to say he retired on Twitter? There
Yeah,
was
he's
something
not
that
going
was
out like that, man.
probably, well, there was something that, to me, the way I looked at it is, there was probably something that was so bad that he was afraid of what would have happened if it came out. So when someone told him he needed to step away from this, he actually believed it. And then that person, maybe that person didn't come with all the ammunition they needed to take down the king or whatever. So it never ended up surfacing. But why would what do we, of all that we know about Vince McMahon, why would he ever voluntarily step away from anything? He's always been the person to take things like head on and straight up and deny and just do whatever he had to do to stay on top. So if he actually stepped away for a time, even just in a technicality, I feel like they had some skeletons in that closet that he didn't want to get out. And
Big
then
time.
when they didn't get out, he was like, all right, well, I'm back. So
But how fucked up would those skeletons be? Like, look at the shit that this man has been accused of. Like, he got accused of fucking rape and sexual assault of a female referee in the 80s. A fucking woman who was like worked in a fucking tanning salon. Fucking, you know what I mean? Like, countless fucking all this other shit. Like, it must have been some pretty fucked up shit that that someone had on him. Like, I'm talking really majorly fucked up shit,
Yep.
because he already had some pretty fucked up shit come out about him, and he was like, well, pal.
And if that came out, wouldn't you believe it? So I the way the whole timeline played out with, Hunter having a heart attack, going into the hospital, Vince and Bruce coming in, driving a bulldozer through NXT, doing all, like, for what? Since when did you ever care about NXT? All of a sudden you care when your son-in-law's in the hospital? You didn't care before that. You don't care after that. But when he's in the hospital, you want to do something with NXT. Seemed very, very, very interesting timing. It also seemed very interesting timing how after Hunter sort of recovered from that, we get allegations against Vince McMahon that are resurfacing or surfacing for the first time or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you really like read between the lines and look at things, there's I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm saying there are definitely some interesting timings on information becoming available and becoming public. Perhaps somebody was looking for some advice. Maybe they turned to somebody like, my boss is, I don't know what to do. What should I do? Well, how about you say this? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. So I don't know. He could have really been gone for that time and then been like, once everything actually cleared up, he's like, I'm back, like maybe that, or maybe it was all just, fun and games and he's pulling strings from the shadows. But
I look, man, I reckon Vince is going to like die in Gorilla. He'll die with his boots on in Gorilla. Like, no doubt about it, man. Like, the guy's a lifer. This has been his life. Like, when he left, I was like, there's no way he's just going to be like, yeah, all right, I'm peace out. I'm going to go now, join the fucking old folks home and watch Linda do knitting while I drink tea and, fall asleep at 11 a.m. and have a mid-morning pupper nap, like
I
Vince
think,
wired like that.
yeah, I think that's what makes it so weird that the WWE sold like that. Everything you just said, like, I could never imagine him walking away from it in any capacity. Ceding the control. That's the thing. Having to be in control. Feeling like you needed to micromanage every aspect of that company for so long. Being involved in every little process, even if you didn't need to be. Yelling at people on headsets on how to do commentary. Like, just go out there and do it yourself if that's how you want it to be done. Why are you yelling through people? All these things that he did, making people, you're not allowed to say certain phrases, like
words,
phrases.
Belt or strap,
can't say belt, can't say hospital, can't do all these stupid things, and then he's just okay with selling it to somebody else.
Yeah,
for what? Just own it and die with it. Why? I thought he would entomb the WWE with him like some Egyptian pharaoh or whatever that's got like a live pet. Is like, all right, wrap my cat up. It's time for me to go in. You're like, how is he selling it? I just don't get it.
And that's where it's going to come down. Like, I think that once that becomes that big argument, it's going to be the same situation shit when like Paul Heyman was put in charge of ECW and then him and Vince had a fucking fallout and he's like, fuck this. I reckon that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to come down to him and Ari Emanuel butting heads and Ari going, well, fuck you, bitch. I own this. And Vince going, fuck you, I'm out. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, it could be. He'll either be out or he'll be forced out. But the time will tell.
100%, man. 100%. But it is that time of the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the vet to do 60 seconds with Piers. If this is your first time tuning in, how this works is I've got a bunch of random ask questions that I've collated over 3 years of doing this podcast, and I'm going to ask Vet a bunch of them. He's got 60 seconds to answer as many as he can. Vet, are you ready for me to start the clock, brother?
Yeah, I'm going to try to set a record.
All right, let's go. All right, 1, 2, 3. Snapchat or TikTok?
Snapchat.
Favorite song to sing at karaoke?
Even Flow by Pearl Jam.
You've got 24 hours to spend $2 million. How are you spending it?
I'm not. Putting it in the bank.
Which celebrity would play you in a movie about your life?
Chris Evans.
What is the last book that you read?
The last book that I read was what was it? Live and Let Die by Ian Fleming.
What is the shittest gift you have ever received?
Oh, wow. I'm going to pass on that.
Which celebrity was your first crush growing up?
Sandra Bullock.
What is one thing that you have tried that you'll never try again?
Pro wrestling.
Would you rather win $10 million or live for twice as long?
Oh, $10 million.
What is something that you enjoy, but you're embarrassed to admit that you like? Kind of like a guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure? I'm not ashamed of anything I like.
There you go. And last one, in 5 minutes' time, you are being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
Whatever will get me the internet in space.
And that has been 60 Seconds with Piers with the vet, Jamie Williams. Jamie, I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been a great conversation, bro. I didn't expect anything less, man, having you on here, bro. It's always great to talk with you and catch up. I'm glad we're able to actually, film this over here at the Piers Austin channel and put it out here. It's great to have you on, and I definitely think we got to do a part 2. But, man, where can everyone find you on social media? Where can they support you, follow you, and check out your content?
All right. Well, first of all, let me just say that the pleasure was all mine. I've been a big fan, and I'm glad to finally be a part of this and join the Luminary cast that I always belonged in. Let's face it, but
100%, bro.
better
100%.
late than never, right? So, no, but no, it really this was a lot of fun, and I really thank you for having me on. Now, if you want to find me anywhere else besides Shooting the Shit Uncensored with Piers Austin, then you can follow me at Opinion Haver, all one word, on any social media platform you choose. Don't actually pick Snapchat because I'm not really on there. I just took the name and then deleted the app off my phone. So Opinion Haver on all your favorite social media platforms, twitch.tv/Opinion Haver. You can watch me play games and talk to me on there if you like. Of course, the Hamin Media Group. You can find me on the Next Level Wrestling Review with Big Ray Hernandez every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk about NXT, obviously, and you may see Piers Austin on there because we'd love to have him back on one more time. And you can also find me on the Impact Attack, which is every Monday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific and 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We go live, and it's me and it's Brandon on there talking about Impact Wrestling, of course. You might catch me on the Monday Locker Rooms with Ben Hameen if you ever listen to those. That's basically everywhere you can find me at the current moment. That should be more than enough for people, right? Piers? They get more than enough of me with just that, right?
100%. You can get a lot of Jamie the Vet Williams over at Channel Attitude with the Hamin Media Group. They're putting out some great, amazing content. But Jamie, I end every interview with this one question, and that is, what is one question I didn't ask you in this podcast that you wish that I did ask you, and how would you have answered that question?
Actually, I was wondering if you were going to ask about, go all the way back to the beginning of how did you become a wrestling fan, or how were you interested in wrestling? And I would have started to answer that by saying, I don't remember a time when I wasn't a wrestling fan because wrestling predates my memories. But if you want to hear the rest of that answer, then we will have to do a part 2 one of these days.
Hell yeah, bro. You know we're going to have to do it. But, man, look, thank you so much for tuning in. Everyone, I appreciate you. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please make sure you tap that little red button and tap in, because we're bringing you some of the best interviews, best conversations from the world of professional wrestling, mixed martial arts, boxing, music, entertainment, and pop culture. And also you can find us on all your podcast platforms. So give us a 5-star review, tap in, and we're going to be delivering you some amazing content for free every single week here at the Piers Austin channel. But until next time, this is the vet, Jamie Williams, and I am the truth, Piers motherfucking Austin. Till next time, we'll see you again soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.